This is Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneurs The Playbook, and I am so excited because I have the only person ever to win the NCAA championship, the Heisman Trophy, Super Bowl, MVP of the Super Bowl, and the MVP of the NFL. And we grew up so close to each other. I dreamed of being Marcus Allen. Obviously, one of us ended up living that dream. But I was blessed, though, to be in the sports industry and to not only watch you on the field, but most importantly, of all the players in the Hall of Fame, and I get to work with so many, and my partner is one. You are as big as a class act off the field that you are on, which is why I wanted you to have on the playbook, because I think your values and your family values, and I'm blessed to be around them as well in their charity, are most important off the field to you, even though you excelled in playing the game. So first of all, growing up, what were your aspirations? What were your dreams?
Well, my dream was to play professional football.
From what age?
Well, early on, but at 10, I made a decision what side of the television set I wanted to be on.
Nice.
I said, I want to play and not watch. And after that, I did everything to that end. I remember my mom always saying I was the first one out of the house for sports, but the last one out of the house for everything else. And she was right.
Now, you have great brothers as well that played sports. Did you feel because of your success it motivated them, or did it put too much pressure on them as well to try to compete with your success?
Well, I'd like to think it motivated them. I know I cast, especially in San Diego, and a large shadow. My brother Damon, who I'm 3 years older than, it appeared not to bother him because he was extremely successful. I always had a great relationship with my brothers, always very supportive, never a jealous bone in their bodies. They were just great, and I always felt the support, which made me obviously made me go out and represent the family as best I possibly could.
I've been around your father more than your mom, but in the family unit, 'cause I think it's so important to be successful. Was that dictated by your parents, or just something that you took on for yourself? Was there?
Well, I had this sort of unique, I think, upbringing and stuff. We had complete structure. We had rules and we had regulations and stuff, but there was this leniency too that we had. We were experiencing things at early ages that at least most people in our neighborhoods didn't experience. We would go hunting at a very early age. I would drive the car. My dad taught me how to drive at a very early age. We used to, I know this is absolutely crazy, but we used to stand on my dad's, on the bumper actually, holding onto his construction rack, like firemen going down the freeway. Obviously, he'd have been thrown in jail for child endangerment now.
You're right. It's hard to describe what happened back then.
We had structure, we had rules, but we were very, very lenient as far as we were exposed to a lot of things growing up and stuff, which I think really helped us. But our dad was very firm about going to school and getting an education and staying out of trouble. Very firm about that. I remember. And my brothers, can bear witness to this, that he would pick the hottest days of the year because he was a construction worker, and he would take us to work with him, and he would say to us, and we would do roofing and things like that, and he says, "Do you want to do this, or would you rather go to college?" And we all said we want to go to college.
Right.
Yes.
I always loved my dad. He would see someone that was struggling on the street or whatever, and he'd look at me and said, you're one bad decision away from being that guy.
Yeah.
So be kind to your future self. Make sure you're making good decisions. What lessons, growing up in San Diego with really great success, from high school on, You know, obviously, you've won all these accolades, so you were a great high school athlete. I was blessed to get to see you actually play against my high school because my coaches played against you. You're just a few years older than me, but at USC, obviously, extreme success. What's the one lesson, you know, as you transition, so many kids out there transition from high school to college, but there's a lesson that they've learned either from a coach, a parent, or someone that really rang true when they made that transition into college? Because it is a difficult transition. What was that one lesson to you that really rang true that you kind of stuck by? Was there something that...
I guess it's not just one. I guess nothing is given to you. You're gonna have to work for it. And there was one other lesson I think was really important, and that I think has always guided me as far as dealing with the press, or actually dealing with the game and players and how I address, you know. Yeah, my dad always said, I can't remember the words exactly, but it was, he had this little frame, and the word said, there's a picture on the wall, just be careful the words you say, you might have to eat them one day. And so I never talked trash during the game or predicted anything like that. I was just always very mindful. So I never talked trash. I never tried to embarrass anybody while I was playing, because I understood it's a tough job, and you know, there's winners and there's losers on every single play, and I always wanted to win, but I never wanted to embarrass anybody or say anything that would embarrass anybody. So I was always careful with the words that I said, because I didn't want to eat them. I remember that very clearly growing up, seeing that on the wall and stuff, and I think it served me well.
Absolutely. And you really, you know, I talked about today is so important to build your own brand, to have your own frequency. So social media didn't exist, thank goodness, when we were younger. But, you know, someone like you probably would have excelled. The one thing, you know, that comes to mind, I remember, you probably don't, but really early on, you were in a beautiful custom suit and you were wearing tennis shoes. And the tennis shoes had white soles like these. And I remember, you know, Warren and I walked up and I said to you, coming from the law profession and, you know, more in the business side where I have to wear uncomfortable shoes, you know, and I said, man, if anybody can pull this off, it's you. And I hope, because you're so stylish that literally somebody says, this is cool. I mean, and I've been around, man. I think you were the very first person to take on that style.
I appreciate that.
And now everybody's copied you. And I want to thank you, because nothing has made my career more comfortable than being able to wear these tennis shoes.
You know what? After a while, after maybe, I don't know how many thousands of miles of running and carries and things like that, you know, you start thinking about style over comfort, but then the style becomes a style, you know, that comfort becomes very stylish. And so I was wearing Jack Purcell's and start wearing sport coat and slacks and things like that. And
I just have to get on Jamie Fritz for not getting more endorsements and sponsorships to brand it early on, right?
I did tell him I need some more shoes, though, that's for sure. And stuff. But yeah,
because I was wearing Jack Purcell's, I got them for free. I'm like, and Marcus doesn't get his for free?
Yeah, I got to talk to him about that. But I was just thinking about being comfortable, and I like the look as well. So,
which, you know, through that frequency and your own personality, you know, you went to the Raiders, which a lot of people don't remember, but when you went to the Raiders, it was not a Marcus Allen branded team, right? I mean, it was a really, you know, you're so stylish. You were getting manicures, and the other guys were looking like, is Marcus really getting a manicure?
No, listen here. What people didn't understand is I could play any way. At the risk of sounding conceited, I felt like I could play in any era. Mm-hmm. And any style.
Like Jim Brown.
And the Raiders were just unique in the sense that they had several characters on the team. And, you know, they would have, obviously, you know, the sayings that if you're not trying, if you're not cheating, rather, you're not trying hard enough, things like that.
It's hard to cheat when you're running back anyway.
But I could certainly play hard. And remember, I came from a defensive background. So I was more aggressive in that sense than I think most running backs, because I actually enjoyed hitting people. I mean, you never like to see an interception, but
You enjoyed
I
it?
enjoyed it.
Returning the favor.
We were always told, we're the last line of defense, so we have to make the play. So, but I always had this defensive mentality. So anytime there was an interception, I mean, it was actually complete joy. This is,
smirked.
This is role reversals now, guys.
Look back at Plunkett and go, thank you.
Yeah, there were never said that to him, but there were times that I was going like, good, this is great. So.
Even moreover though, fear is a big component in life. And I teach people about ego-based consciousness, and there's more fear. I find a lot of people transitioning out of the league, and you've been very successful out of the league in your business acumen. What was your biggest fear in your career, either on or off the field, that you had to deal with?
The only time I've ever been fearful was when I never had information. It's like going on television, you're fine. I mean, but if you don't have the information, then you're like, oh my gosh, Right. But as long as you have all the information, I've never been fearful. And the same thing as it relates to business or any other, charitable endeavor, whatever it may be, as long as I have the information and then I can make a prudent decision, I'm fine with that. Having lack of information, obviously, I think at times we all get sort of nervous because we're not completely sure about what we're talking about, and that's not a good thing. Yeah. But if you have all the information, I think it's one of the more critical things in order to be successful, and that's whether you're going into business. Know what you're doing 100%, become an expert at it, just like in football. I mean, I knew everything about football. I mean, I knew about, I used to look back at the Raiders and I would see that, Willie Brown went to Grambling, and then I look at Buck Buchanan, he was a teammate at Grambling. I mean, I knew all these things growing up, Yeah. And so I sort of knew the history of the league and the great players and where they went to college and stuff. And so I felt very comfortable talking about football or engaging in the game and knowing the great players and the standards that they set, that I can soon become that. So I think one of the first and most important thing is identify what you want in life.
I love that.
Because, there's a saying, he or she who knows not where they're going, any road will take them there. So you got to know what you want. You got to identify that one thing. And then go out and get all the information you possibly can and become an expert at it.
Speaking of which, I talk about this a lot when, I'm doing my speaking and books and everything about, I think we're not doing people service. We keep talking about their why. And I really believe that most people on earth have the same why. They want to do stuff for other people, whether it's their children, their mom, their aunts, their uncles, their grand. Like everybody's like, why are you doing that? Oh, I want to buy my mom a house, right? I want my kids to do this. Like everyone has the same why, but I agree with you that so many people don't take the time to ask what their what is. Because if you don't know your what, how are you going to get to the how? Yeah. And if you don't know your what, you're not going to be able to implement the why.
Yeah.
What tip would you give someone as far as, a lot of times today, kids attached to some far-reaching, because things are so quick, they don't know how long it takes to become successful. From the time you were 4 or 5 years old, you worked really hard to be a professional athlete, and then even today, you're still working really hard to become what you want to become off the field. What tips do you give for people to have the perspective and the patience? I'm in college and I think I should be making 6 figures right out of college and be a huge success, and there's all this pressure to be successful. Are there any tips that you could give as far as patience goes?
The first thing, and I always tell my little boy Drake, and he doesn't even understand this, but I always tell him a free lunch costs $1.99, meaning there's nothing free in this world.
That's awesome.
So if you really want it, you're going to have to go get it and work for it and fight for it. And if somebody tells you otherwise, they're not telling you the truth. It's not going to serve you well. Your approach is, nobody's going to give you anything in life. You're going to have to go out and earn it. You will feel better about yourself. You will have such pride in what you're doing and the work that you put in. I think that's critical. I think that's critical from the beginning. A free lunch costs $1.99.
We'll put that up in my office. I love that. 'Cause
meaning there's no such thing as free. If you want it, go get it.
So no, you are hyper aggressive, hyper competitive. So like my business partner Warren, but yet your demeanor. What I love about you guys since I've known you is, you don't go too high, and you definitely don't go too low. How do you control, frustration, anger? When we make mistakes on the field and off. I've watched you. I always say when Warren lost the Buffalo game.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to commit suicide, right? He wasn't crying on the sideline. You could see he was disappointed. He kind of shook his head a little bit, and he was frustrated, but he handled it. And when he threw against Kansas City, 522 yards against the #1 defense, this is all you got from him.
Right.
You're the same type of person. You've been there before. How do you control those emotions so that you can execute clearly like you do?
Well, those are successes and failures in the larger picture. The larger picture was for me to be one of the greatest players that ever played, not just to win a championship, not just to win certain awards. And so along that path there are going to be mistakes, which to me are lessons that have to work harder to get there, and that despite what, in your mind, you have to say, you're never as good as people say you are, you're never as bad. So you have to maintain some sort of sanity, some perspective, but it's a high bar that you set for yourself. And so, I still remember some of the mistakes I made, more so than some of the good plays that I made. Yeah, absolutely. Those things, they stick with you, and you wish they would go away. Like I said, I still remember some of the negative plays that I made that impacted the team in a bad way. And nobody is more. We're harder on ourselves than anybody could ever imagine. No matter, what people say or have, how much they emphasize how bad we are at that particular time. It's not even, it pales in comparison. But at the same time, you have to say, it's, let me reflect again and say, that's a lesson that I've learned. I'm going to have to be better at it. I'm going to have to never let that happen again. And you got to move on because there was a larger picture.
A setup.
Yes.
Not a setback.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see that in my own life. It's interesting because when I became an executive at a young age, I was very difficult because people were older than me, but I was difficult managing people. Mm-hmm. And I, asked my mom for advice. I'm like, I'm not getting along with the managers and directors, the youngest vice president of this huge company. And I said, and you taught me to treat other people like I should want to be treated myself. And my mom literally said that to me. She goes, you cannot treat people like you treat yourself. You don't treat yourself well. You're way too hard on yourself. You can't treat people like that. Right. You're going to run them away. Here's the hardest question I'm going to ask them. Haven't asked any Hall of Famer this, but because you've been an MVP of the Super Bowl and champion and at every level, and my business partner, the only thing playing that he didn't win, from Man of the Year to everything, was the Super Bowl, and he's pretty darn close. Right. And so many players that I know in marketing the Hall of Fame and having so many friends and associates in the Hall of Fame, I always wonder, is it true that you'd rather have a Super Bowl ring than be in the Hall of Fame? And you don't have to answer it if it's not, but I'm really curious how you feel, because it's such an accomplishment. Your career is so great, and but
I've never heard that.
Yeah, so Warren has said that he would trade his Hall of Fame ring for a Super Bowl ring.
Well, listen here. I guess when you win one and you're a Hall of Famer, it's kind of a how do you
right.
That's a hard question to answer because.
No, here was another question. Then, when you were playing, when you were actually playing, were your focus more on winning the Super Bowl than getting into the Hall of Fame?
I was focused on being one of the greatest players that ever played. And if I did that,
you'd win a Super Bowl.
That would catapult, I would at least do my part in helping our team win a Super Bowl.
And when we're looking at Hall of Famers, so you have people like Eli Manning that have won Super Bowls, or Joe Namath, who's, I always joke around, Joe Namath statistically is probably the worst person in the Hall of Fame. And I said he was one win away from not making the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he was a game changer, though.
Exactly. Right, it's the history of the game.
Right, yeah. If you look at the game, Joe Namath was a game changer. He popular. I mean, the football became, it became popular before that. Obviously, the first televised game.
Yeah. The first showman, too.
Yeah, the Colts playing. But that, the guarantee and all those things, it's really catapulted the game to an amazing status, which we all today benefit from. So Joe certainly deserves it. I think he's one of the, he was an icon, and he
still is.
He had such, you talk about style. Joe had tremendous style then. I think he was one of the first players to wear white shoes, I think it was. So.
There you go. And pantyhose. So.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that.
Ahmad Rashad followed suit. It's all right. I'm too old now. I'm aging myself. People are like,
well, it must have been in cold weather, man. So right. I think guys will do anything to stay warm, man. They'll try any trick. So.